First of all, I want to thank all of you for coming this morning on behalf of the North Carolina Association of Certified Public Accountants. The purpose of our meeting today is to let people know that they've got some help in understanding what Senator Berger referred to as a huge change in the way North Carolinians pay their taxes. And anytime we make that sort of adjustment and change in people's lives, there's quite a bit of fear and anxiety of how is that going to affect me. And that's why today I'm very proud excuse me, to present the CPAs with, I think, a very good approach to help educate, I beg your pardon, the citizens of North Carolina in trying to understand just exactly how these new changes in the tax policy of the state will change. Everybody understands that it's antiquated and based on the manufacturing state that we used to be. We've switched now to a much more service-based economy, and the changes in how we fund government are necessary. But in doing that change, especially when you affect people's pocketbooks, they get very nervous and anxious, and unfortunately a lot of misinformation gets spread around, which increases the anxieties. So at this time I'd like to introduce Mr. Jim Ayler, who is the CEO of the North Carolina Association of Certified Public Accountants, and have him present to you what I think is a very good project.
Thank you very much, Representative Avila. We really appreciate you helping us with this, and I'm very pleased to be with you. Thank you for joining us on a very important morning and helping us launch the Tar Heel Tax Reform Initiative. I'm Jim Ayler, CEO of the North Carolina Association of CPAs. We represent 13,500 CPAs across the state in public practice, business and industry, government, and education. We are here today to talk about taxes. Taxes are confusing and complex. They're not getting easier. And the average citizen has a daunting task to understand all the complicated twists and turns. We have been told by experts that if we fail to adapt our tax code to the changing economy, this state could be in dire consequences in 3 to 5 years. So it's not an option to do tax reform, we must do it. As CPAs, it's our job to be financial translators to clients, business colleagues, and employers. We're not economists, we're not going to predict the revenue flows, but we can interpret the implications. That's why we're introducing the Tar Heel Tax Reform Initiative. It's a website created for the citizens of North Carolina and our members to help educate them on all the various proposals that have been introduced thus far. As a nonpartisan group, we're not going to evaluate the merits of each of these proposals, but we will get deep into the fiscal implications. We know there are 7 bills pending. We heard a press release yesterday. I would presume one of those bills will change. One of the key resources that we've created to help people understand is a 3-minute video on our website. Paris, if you'll cue the video.
This is Michael. And this is Sarah. They own a hardware store. They live in North Carolina with their 2 children. They love North Carolina. They love the weather, the communities, and don't forget the food. Michael and Sarah's business took a hit during the recent recession. They knew that this was part of running a business, the highs and the lows. What they didn't know is that North Carolina's outdated tax code exposes businesses and families like theirs to big risks during recessions. That's where the North Carolina Association of CPAs comes in. We are an independent, nonpartisan organization. We're known by the families and businesses we serve as financial translators. So we're working to educate our clients and the people of North Carolina about the issue of tax reform and why we need it here in North Carolina. Here's how we explain the situation to folks like Michael and Sarah. North Carolina's current tax code was designed during the Roosevelt era. Things were different then. At that time, North Carolina had a production economy based around manufacturing and agriculture. Since then, our economy has changed, but our tax code remains the same. The tax code is highly dependent on personal and corporate income tax, which is a very volatile source of revenue. In fact, the tax code is making it harder for our state to compete with neighboring states for jobs. Our top personal income tax rate is highest in the Southeast, while our household median income is second to last. And our corporate tax rate? It's also the highest. All this means that when out-of-state businesses are deciding where to move, they're a little less likely to choose North Carolina, and that in-state businesses are less likely to expand. North Carolina's volatile revenue stream has forced our state to impose sudden tax hikes and spending cuts multiple times in recent years. That's why people from across the political spectrum are all saying that North Carolina needs tax reform and needs it now. However, there is little agreement on which plan of action to take. So what do North Carolina CPAs think tax reform should look like? While we don't support any specific piece of legislation, we believe there are three key principles that should guide our tax reform efforts. First is reliability. North Carolina needs a stable, predictable revenue stream to help us avoid unplanned tax hikes and cuts to critical services. Second is transparency. Taxpayers have a right to know about the taxes they pay, how much, to whom, and for what. Third is fairness. A just and equitable system, as difficult as it is to achieve, should always be the goal. So what's next for Michael and Sarah? If the tax code remains the same, their business may be in danger during future recessions because of the impact of sudden tax hikes and spending cuts on their family, their business, and their customers. Of course, we can't avoid future downturns in the economy. However, if North Carolina's lawmakers take a serious approach to tax code reform, Michael and Sarah, and our whole state, will be in a better position to weather the next recession. We cannot afford to wait until the next economic downturn. We must act now to modernize North Carolina's tax code. Want to get involved? Visit TarHeelTaxReform.com and sign our petition to Governor McCrory and our state's leaders to take action on tax reform now.
Thank you, Harris. I'm now pleased to turn the podium over to a real expert. Rollin Gross-Close is a practicing CPA in Asheville, North Carolina with Johnson Price Sprinkle. He chairs our Tax Modernization Task Force, also chairs our Taxation Committee, which in and of itself is a big job, and fortunately for us is coming on our Board of Directors. Rollin?
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate the opportunity to talk some about tax reform. It's something that I live and breathe almost daily, and there are a lot of issues that have gotten us to this point, a lot of challenges that have brought us here, and a lot of things that have changed over the last 50, 60, 70 years other than the tax code. I've been privileged to be part of the task force that Jim referenced, which has been trying to work to understand different plans that have been proposed. We have 7 different bills out there right now. We've also been privileged to work closely with the legislators who have invited us to the table to sit down and discuss the different proposals and plans and ideas to try to speak to them and to help understand what the need for tax reform is and what some of the merits of that are. It's not an easy task. It's not a popular task. It's something that's difficult to engage in and a lot of personal interests there, but we try to set those aside as a nonpartisan group and to really objectively look at the impact on the state and the impact on its citizens. I'd like to thank the General Assembly for their efforts in putting this on the table. We've had a lot of activity already, a lot of discussion around this, and we certainly support the General Assembly in trying to put reform on the table right now, to present the importance of it, the need for it, and the need for it to happen now. The tax code is outdated, as we saw earlier, dating back to the 1930s. We have a very different economy. Our economies locally and across the state and across the country and world are much different than they were at that point in time. The current tax code dated back then makes a very unpredictable revenue stream, makes it very difficult to budget, very difficult to plan around, And it's kind of like watching the stock market. We try to see what happened good in the past, and we try to follow it after the fact. And that might mean increases in tax rates or cuts in benefits and cuts in services that are provided to our citizens. And that makes it very difficult for families to plan, for businesses to plan, for employers to be able to plan. Has a real impact on our citizens and businesses, makes it very difficult. North Carolina has the highest personal income tax and corporate income tax rate in the Southeast. We also are 17th across the 50 states in terms of total tax burden. So you look at all the taxes combined, we're well above the median point there. So there's a need for change. The roller coaster revenue stream makes it very difficult. We have a very reactionary approach to dealing with our economy and the health of our state and families. Again, we're not promoting specific legislation. We're trying to look at 3 core principles that we believe are necessary for any consideration of tax reform. Those are reliability. We need to be able to have something that we can plan on, plan around, plan for. Transparency, which to me, transparency brings an element of simplicity as well. Doesn't mean it's totally straightforward. There need to be some complexities, obviously, because of all the different situations and circumstances we have, different industries. But transparency allows people to understand that, allows people to absorb that. And as CPAs, we live in that world all the time, trying to help people understand the impact on their personal lives, on their businesses, as employers, as employees. What does this mean? And so we're trying to be working in that arena to try to help people out. Fairness is the last one. Simplicity and fairness, some would say, can't really live together, can't be at the same table, but there's a way to bring those two together and balance that. Tax reform is the responsible thing to do, something that we can't continue to wait to happen later on. There's a need, as Jim mentioned. Economists, nonpartisan groups are saying that we have 3 to 5 years before we start to need some major changes. And so now's the time to start looking at making some changes to our tax code and to use that as a means to provide some predictability and transparency for our citizens. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Roland. Nicely done. Thank you. Thank you, Roland. Certainly appreciate it. I want to thank Representative Avila again for assisting us with this room. And I want to echo Roland's comments and applaud the courage of the General Assembly to take up a challenge such as tax reform. There are lots of interest groups out there promoting various different ideas. We are going to do our best with this task force that we have created that Roland heads up to analyze and try and put good information out. There are so many out there that it can be daunting at times. So we suspect that the average taxpayer will have a very difficult time interpreting the tax debate. So we're going to try and do our best. Again, we're not economists, so predicting revenue streams for the state of North Carolina will be a challenge, but we can certainly evaluate the impact of each of the tax proposals and try and assess and provide that information. I want to encourage everyone to visit the website. It's very well done. It will be very dynamic, as will the General Assembly, and we will try and stay up with all the proposals that are on the table. I believe we have covered everything. Encourage our members, since I have the opportunity to do this, to encourage our members to visit our website, provide us feedback, and obviously encourage their clients, business associates, and employers to reach out to the CPAs in the state to ask for ideas and information. TarHeelTaxReform.com.